I moved back to Elmsworth about a month ago. At 32, I thought I could reconnect with my childhood town while writing local stories. I never expected to find darkness lurking beneath the surface. My assignment began simply. I wandered through the town square, hoping to gather tales about the Curandera, an old woman known for her remedies. I stopped at the cafe to chat with locals. They laughed, shared stories, and sipped coffee, acting like everything was fine. At least that's what I thought. Then I visited Mrs. Etta, an elderly woman with a quirky reputation. As soon as I mentioned the Curandera, the mood shifted. She grew quiet, and a chill ran through me. I sensed something was off. "Etta, what do you know about her?" I pressed gently. She looked away, her eyes wide. "They say things happen when she's around. Cattle die, crops fail." She whispered, and it felt like she was sharing a secret. I figured they must be exaggerating. She was a healer, not a monster. But Etta's fear hit me hard. That night I lay in my old room staring at the ceiling. The house creaked as I tried to shake off her words, but a whisper seemed to echo in my mind. I wasn't sure if it was real or just my imagination. Over the next few days, I noticed everyone had the same anxious reaction whenever I brought up the Curandera. Friends exchanged worried glances and their stories changed, edging into darker territory. I started to see strange things myself. Photographs I took looked different. Shadows appeared behind me that hadn't been there before. As I dug deeper, I found odd signs around town. Trinkets disappeared from my parents' house. I saw strange symbols carved into trees. My heart raced every time something brushed against me in the night. Was I just tired? Maybe I was imagining things. But something felt wrong. I could almost feel an energy around me, thick and heavy, and I couldn't shake it. The final night before a town meeting, I stood outside the town hall. The sky turned dark, clouds rolling in. My mind raced with questions, but nobody would answer. Then I spotted a figure in the shadows. I approached, my heart pounding. It was a woman, her face hidden. "Who are you?" I asked, but she didn't reply. Then she turned her head slightly, and I almost froze. "Mark," she said, her voice low and eerie. I stumbled back. "Why do you seek her?" she asked, and I recoiled. I didn't have time to answer. I turned to run, but when I glanced back, she was gone. The only thing I could hear was the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. Now, I'm left with a choice. Do I dig deeper and confront the darkness, or do I flee from the pull of the Curandera? Either way, the whispers just won't let me go. The next day, I decided I couldn't avoid the Curandera any longer. I had to know what the townsfolk were afraid of. I headed to the library, hoping to find old newspapers or records that could shed light on her story. As I stepped inside, the familiar smell of old books enveloped me. A handful of patrons sat at tables, their heads buried in stacks of dusty volumes. I approached the librarian, an older woman with round glasses perched on her nose. "I'm looking for information about the Curandera," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She paused, her brows furrowing as if the name itself weighed heavily on her. "That's an interesting choice," she said slowly, as if measuring her words. "What exactly do you want to know?" "Anything. Stories, events, any articles relating to her." The librarian sat back in her chair, contemplating. "I suppose I can show you the archives. Follow me." As we walked, I scanned the shelves, my nerves tingling with anticipation. She led me to the back of the library. The archive room was dim and cramped, filled with old boxes and files. Dust motes danced in the air as I followed her in. She pulled out a box labeled Elmsworth Oddities and began flipping through papers. I leaned closer, searching for something, anything, that would help explain the town's fear. That's when I saw it. An article from 50 years ago detailing a series of unexplained livestock deaths. Every farmer mentioned had experienced strange occurrences around the same time: shadows creeping at dusk, crops wilting overnight, dark skies that seemed to stretch forever. I froze, the words blurring as electricity prickled down my spine. But then another headline caught my eye. Curandera causes fear, leads to townsfolk's disappearance. My breath quickened as I read that the Curandera had been connected to missing locals throughout various decades. I looked up at the librarian. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She glanced around, then leaned closer. "No one talks about it these days, but many believed she was cursed. People who sought her out often lost something, either their health or sometimes they simply vanished." Goosebumps raced across my skin. Could this be why everyone was so afraid? Suddenly the lights flickered overhead. My heart stopped as one bulb went out completely. What was that? I turned to the librarian, but she was staring behind me, her face drained of color. I turned around, and the room felt colder. "Is anyone there?" I called out. Nothing answered. Then I saw it. A shadow gliding along the edge of the room, almost like it was searching for something. Someone was in the library with us. "Run," the librarian whispered, her voice trembling. Without thinking, I bolted for the door. The paper spilled from the box as I dashed past, but I didn't dare stop. I pushed through the door and raced into the main area. The chill lingered around me, and my breath came in rapid bursts. As I reached the entrance, I glanced back toward the archive room. The shadow was gone, but something deep inside me felt a weight, as if the darkness was chasing me. I needed answers, but at what cost? I stepped outside, ready to confront whatever truths awaited me in Elmsworth. Chapter 2. The Weight of Truth. Outside, the sunlight felt almost blinding after the dimness of the library. I shielded my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to shake off the lingering fear. But the unease tightened inside me, a knot that wouldn't loosen. I needed to talk to someone, anyone, who could help me make sense of what I had just learned. I wandered toward the town square, where a few people milled about, their voices mingling in the crisp air. I spotted Mr. Henderson, an elderly man who had lived in Elmsworth his entire life. He was sitting on a bench, watching the world with wary eyes. He might know something about the Curandera or the missing townspeople. "Mr. Henderson," I called, approaching him. He looked up slowly, and I noticed a flicker of recognition followed by concern. "What brings you here, young lady?" he asked, his tone cautious. "I was in the library, and I found some articles about the Curandera," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Can you tell me more about her?" His gaze hardened, and he sighed heavily. "It's best to let those tales lie. They're not something to dig up." "Please," I pressed. "People are afraid of her. I need to understand why." He stared at me for a long moment, and I could almost see the memories racing through his mind. Finally, he leaned closer, lowering his voice. "She was a healer once. People came to her when they were desperate, but those who did, they either left empty-handed or worse." "What do you mean?" I asked, swallowed by curiosity. "Perhaps they thought they'd find safety in her powers, but it's always a gamble," he replied, shaking his head. "People would vanish without a trace after seeking her help. Rumors spread about curses, darkness, things that just weren't right." My heart raced. "And you believe it?" He rubbed his chin, appearing lost in thought. "It's easier to believe than to face the unknown. Some say she can see into the hearts of her visitors. Not everyone can handle what they find there." Before I could ask more, something shifted in the air. It was sudden and unsettling. I turned to look around the square, but no one else seemed to heed the tension that hung thick like fog. Without thinking, my eyes darted toward the library. "Are you okay?" Mr. Henderson asked, noticing my distraction. I think I need to go back, I said softly, my voice faltering. Something was compelling me back toward the library. I felt drawn to the mystery underneath the town's surface. As I started to walk back, I glimpsed a figure by the library's entrance, a woman in a long, dark cloak with a front hood obscuring her face. My breath caught in my throat. The shadows around her seemed to twist and contort as if they had a life of their own. I hesitated for just a moment, but then she turned and disappeared inside. My heart pounded. Was she the Curandera? I raised my foot to follow, but doubt crept in. The stories I'd heard kept spinning in my mind. What if this time it was true? But I had to know. With a deep breath, I took a step forward, plunging into the unknown. Chapter 3. The Doorway to Secrets. As I pushed open the library's heavy door, a wave of musty air enveloped me. It felt as if the walls had memories of their own. I stepped inside, my heart thumping in my chest. The library was quiet, almost too quiet, with shadows playing tricks on my mind. I glanced around, but the cloaked woman was nowhere to be seen. The shelves stood like sentinels, filled with books that held untold stories. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I had to find her, or at least uncover something more. Moving cautiously, I moved toward the back of the library where the darker corners lay. There was a small room I had noticed during my last visit, filled with old texts and strange artifacts. I reached for the door handle when suddenly a sharp noise made me jump, like whispering voices had erupted from the very walls. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely louder than a whisper. The sound seemed to sink into the air and evaporate. I opened the door and stepped inside. The room was dim, lit only by a small window that let in slivers of light. Dust danced in the beams, and my eyes landed on a large, leather-bound book that lay open on a table. I walked over, my fingers itching to turn the pages. The text was old and faded but legible. It told stories of the Curandera, of people who sought her help, and the terrible outcomes that followed. I noticed one name mentioned repeatedly. Isabella. Was this the same Isabella the townsfolk whispered about? My hands shook as I turned to a page filled with sketches and symbols. It looked almost like a map of the town. It marked places that sent chills through me, locations where people had disappeared. Then it happened. The room grew colder, and I felt like I wasn't alone. Shadows shifted around me, darkening the corners. I turned, caught sight of a flicker of movement, and froze. "Who's there?" I breathed, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. No answer came, just the silence of the library and the sound of my heart pounding. I was about to leave when something caught my eye. A glint under the table. I crouched down and discovered a small, ornate box. Its latch was slightly open, almost as if it was inviting me in. I hesitated, torn between curiosity and fear. The small, faint whispering returned, echoing from the walls, urging me forward. I reached for the latch and lifted the lid. Inside I found a collection of small trinkets, tokens that looked like offerings, tiny bundles of herbs, a piece of jewelry, and an old photograph. I picked up the photograph and felt a chill run down my spine. It was a group of people standing in front of the library, with a familiar figure among them, the same cloaked woman I had seen outside. I felt my breath hitch, an unsettling realization creeping in. Just then the sound of footsteps jolted me from my thoughts. Someone was coming. Panic surged as I started to hide the box back under the table, but before I could, the door swung open. It was her, the Curandera. My heart lurched, and the shadows seemed to close around me. This was it. There was nowhere left to run. Chapter 4. The Unveiling. The Curandera stepped into the room, her dark cloak swirling like mist around her. I held my breath, heart racing as she scanned the space. her eyes sharp and knowing. I felt caught, like a deer in the headlights. It was clear she had seen the box and its contents. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice low and firm, slicing through the silence. I stammered, searching for a reasonable response, but all that came out was, I was just? Her gaze narrowed. "You're trespassing in a realm that holds secrets not meant for the uninvited." I gulped. "I'm sorry, I was looking for answers. About Isabella." The name slipped out before I could stop it. At the mention, her expression flickered. "Isabella?" she echoed, almost as if she were tasting the name. I watched as her demeanor softened slightly, but not enough to make me feel safe. "You shouldn't seek her," the Curandera continued. "Her story is not one of light. It is woven with darkness and betrayal." I hesitated, caught between fear and curiosity. "But I have to know. People have gone missing. The townsfolk." "Do not listen to their whispers," she interrupted, stepping closer. The air grew heavy with her presence. "They do not know what they speak of. Isabella's story is my story, and it ended long ago." I was about to ask her what she meant, but she pointed to the photographs scattered across the table. "You've seen these, haven't you? Those who've come before you, those like you, who fancied they could unravel the threads of fate. But fate is a cruel mistress. Then why help anyone?" My voice trembled, each word a struggle. "Why not just let it go?" The Curandera's eyes darkened. "Because I am tied to this place, as is she. Those who seek me often do not leave the same. What do you know of the Fae? Of spirits that haunt this land?" I felt my stomach twist. "I've heard stories." "They are not stories. They are warnings." Her voice lowered. "In this town the veil is thin. People have vanished into the shadows, and they are never the same when they return, if they return at all." A chill ran down my back, the shadows in the room seeming to pulse in agreement. "What does that mean for me?" "There are risks, child, greater than you can imagine." Suddenly the air shifted. I heard a distant wail, like the echo of a lost soul. My body froze. The Curandera looked toward the door, and in that instant her calm facade cracked. "Get out," she urged, gripping my arm. Before I could ask what was happening, the room plunged into darkness. My breath quickened as panic clawed at my chest. I stumbled back, feeling my way through the shadows. "What's going on?" I shouted, voice quaking. "Trust me, you must go," she insisted. And then the shadows swirled, enveloping her. It was as if she was merging with the darkness. I turned to flee, but the door slammed shut. I banged on it, heart racing. I was trapped. Then everything grew silent. My eyes darted around, searching for a ghost of light. I thought I saw shapes moving, and a cold voice whispered from the shadows, "You shouldn't have come here." My next breath caught in my throat. I was not alone anymore. Chapter 5. Echoes of the Past. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering against my ribcage. The whisper had sent cold chills down my spine. I forced myself to look around, desperate for anything that could illuminate the darkness. The shadows seemed to dance, twisting into shapes that faded in and out of focus. "Who's there?" My voice was shaky, and I hated how terrified I sounded. The silence wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. No answer. Then I heard it again, a faint wailing echoing through the room. I felt the air grow chillier, pressing against my skin like a warning. I needed to escape. I turned back to the door, my fists hammering against the wood, but it remained solid, unyielding. "Somebody help!" I shouted, my voice cracked under the weight of panic. The wailing grew louder, and suddenly a sharp burst of light pierced the darkness. I shielded my eyes, squinting, trying to make sense of the shifting shadows. When I looked again, a figure stood before me, almost transparent. It was a woman, her long hair floating around her as if held by water. Isabella. I breathed, taking an instinctive step back. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Instead, the air around her vibrated with emotion, swirling like a storm. I could see her face clearly now, etched with a blend of sorrow and anger. The stories about her faded victims flooded my mind, people who had wandered too close to the edge of the veil. "Please," I whispered, my heart pounding even faster. "I want to help you." Her eyes met mine, and I felt a jolt of recognition. It was like looking into a mirror, reflecting my own fears and uncertainties. The shadows twisted around her, threatening to consume her, and I fought the urge to run. But then she raised a hand, pointing to something behind me. I turned, just as a cold gust swept through the room, forcing the door to creak open. Hope surged within me. The escape was just there, a promise of safety. But before I could run, Isabella advanced, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. "Wait," I called out, feeling the pull of something deeper. "Why are you still here?" She raised her other hand, and I felt a surge of warmth flood my chest. Images flashed. Her life, her pain, the betrayal she suffered long ago. I was seeing fragments of her past like slices from a broken tapestry. Confusion overwhelmed me. "You're trapped, aren't you? Caught between two worlds." Isabella nodded, tears shimmering like droplets of dew in the dark. Then I heard the wailing again, more intense this time. It echoed through the room, mixing with Isabella's sorrow. The shadows started to swirl faster, inching closer to me. Panic rose. "I need to help you. I don't want to leave." But as I reached for her, the temperature dropped, and the lights flickered again. The shadows pressed in, more aggressive now. They seemed hungry. "I can't," I gasped, feeling the weight of the darkness tugging at me. Just as the shadows enveloped me, there was a loud crash. I was thrown back against the wall, and for a moment, everything went dark again. I blinked rapidly, heart racing. The room flickered back to life, and I saw the Curandera standing by the door, her face twisted in anguish. "Leave now," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You cannot save her." And in that moment I realized I was losing my chance. "Isabella," I cried, desperate. But the ghostly figure was fading again, swallowed by the shadows. I felt a pull toward the door, the Curandera's urgency clashing with my instinct to stay. I had to choose. That's when I saw it. The box. It was still on the table, half open, and something inside shimmered with a faint light, calling out to me. I lunged for it just as the darkness coiled around my ankles, ready to pull me under. Chapter 6. The Box of Secrets. The moment my fingers brushed against the cool surface of the box, a jolt of energy surged through me. I felt the darkness hesitate, almost as if it were allowing me a reprieve. I ripped the box open, and the light inside spilled out like liquid silver, illuminating the room for the first time. There, nestled within the soft velvet lining, lay a small amulet. It shimmered with a brightness that contrasted sharply with the shadows creeping closer. I grabbed it, feeling an immediate connection to Isabella, as if the amulet were a tether to her soul. "Isabella, I don't know if this will help," I shouted, but my voice trembled as the shadows bunched around my feet. I clutched the amulet tighter, feeling its warmth seep into my skin. The air thickened, and the sounds of wailing turned into a dissonant chorus, echoing my every fear. The Curandera rushed towards me, weaving through the darkness unscathed. "You have to get out of here." She reached for the box, her fingers trembling. "That amulet holds her essence. If she wants you to leave, you must listen." "But I can't just abandon her," I protested, glancing back at the flickering figure of Isabella. "She needs me." Isabella's eyes locked onto mine once more. There was a desperation in her gaze, but this time it was accompanied by a flicker of hope. I took a shaky step toward her, feeling a pull unlike anything I had ever experienced. The shadows were relentless, growing more aggressive, their whispers a cacophony around me. "Please," I shouted at the swirling darkness. "Let her go." The shadows surged, but with the amulet in my hand I felt a surge of courage. I raised the amulet between us, and the light expanded, creating a barrier against the encroaching darkness. The wailing grew louder, a mixture of pain and rage. "Isabella, I want to help," I cried. "Tell me what to do." In response, she raised her hand again, and I realized she was trying to show me something. I closed my eyes, focusing on the warmth of the amulet. Suddenly, memories flashed in my mind, fragments of her life, her fears, and the betrayal she suffered when she was alive. I saw the faces of those who had wronged her, the very people who had trapped her in this limbo. Then a new memory surfaced, an old ritual, one that could break the chains binding her to this place. I stumbled back, breath hitching. I opened my eyes. "I can help you free yourself, but you have to trust me." The shadows paused at my words, allowing a moment of stillness. Isabella nodded, her expression shifting from anguish to determination. "Go!" The Curandera shouted again, but I shook my head, focusing on Isabella. "Together, we can end this," I whispered. But just as I took a step closer, the shadows roared back to life, crashing like waves against a shore. The darkness demanded its toll. I felt it grabbing at my legs, tugging me down, nearly pulling me under. The amulet flared brightly in my grip, casting a circle of light around me. I looked desperately at the Curandera. "I can't leave without her." Suddenly, the door slammed shut with a deafening thud, trapping us in the storm of chaos. My heart raced. The box, the amulet, and Isabella were my only hope. But could it be enough? As I felt the pull of the shadows grow stronger, a chilling thought struck me. I realized the amulet was more than just a tool. It was a key to something ancient, and the power within it depended on both of us. "Isabella," I cried, my voice rising above the chaos. "Let's break this cycle." And then I felt it, the shadows drawing back as if they sensed the shift. But was it too late? Chapter 7. The ritual unravels. The shadows lurked, their hunger palpable, pressing in on me. I felt the amulet's warmth pulse against my palm, reminding me of Isabella. I could sense her hope blending with my own resolve. With each beat of my heart, I became more determined. "Isabella!" I shouted again, and the clarity of our bond strengthened when she stepped forward, light shimmering around her. The darkness hesitated, as if unsure how to react. I couldn't let that moment slip away. I had to act quickly. "Focus," I called to her. "Remember the ritual. Show me how to do it." Isabella's image flickered, and I saw that same memory, the ancient rite. I could almost hear the chant echoing in my mind. It was as if the amulet unlocked a door inside me, pushing forth the knowledge I needed. I took a deep breath, gathering everything around me. With the amulet raised, I let the strength flow through me. "We can end this together," I yelled. "Reveal the truth." Suddenly, shadows writhed and twisted, blurring the edges of my vision. I felt the walls around us pulse, almost alive. It was as if the entire room was a living entity, responding to my words. In that moment, I understood. I had to confront the sorrow and rage that trapped Isabella here, and I had the power to do it. "Isabella, speak with me," I urged, feeling the amulet guide my voice. "What do we need to say?" She reached out with her hand, and I could feel the pull of our connection. "The names," she whispered. "Say their names." The darkness shuddered. I hesitated, but I could see Isabella's determination reflected in her eyes. "They deserve to be named," she insisted, her voice clearer than ever. I nodded, swallowing my fear. "Then, let's do this." I took a breath and began to call out those who had harmed her. Each name echoed in the chamber like a hammer striking metal, vibrating through the space and pushing back the shadows. "Maria! Antonio! Renata!" I shouted, feeling the amulet flare brighter with each name. It was working. The shadows fought fiercely, howling, but I held my ground, letting the light from the amulet create a refuge around us. But then I noticed something terrible. The wailing, once a mere backdrop, became sharper. The shadows twisted, forming faces filled with anger and despair, mouths opening wide to scream in tandem with the darkness. I felt a surge of fear and disbelief wash over me. I couldn't stop. "I won't let you hold her. You can't have her anymore," I cried out, the weight of their wrath pressing against me, urging me to flee. But in the midst of the chaos, I realized my voice was not just mine. It was Isabella's, merging with mine, stronger than the tempest surrounding us. "Together," she urged, echoing my own thoughts. "We'll break this." Suddenly the amulet shot a beam of light towards the center of the room. The shadows recoiled, letting out a deafening roar. I fell to my knees, overcome as I witnessed a swirling vortex forming within the light. It was both a doorway and a prison for those trapped within. My heart raced in my chest as I gripped the amulet tighter. "What happens now?" I gasped, unsure if I was strong enough for what was to come. "Finish it," Isabella commanded, her voice unwavering. That was when I saw it. A dark figure lingering at the edge, watching, waiting. A new wave of dread washed over me. That presence felt familiar, chilling my blood. I risked a glance, and the shadows slithered, revealing a silhouette that sent a shiver down my spine. I had stirred something much worse than I thought. "Isabella, look out!" I yelled, my voice cracking. The confrontation was only beginning. Chapter 8. The Dark Figure. The figure stepped forward, and the flickering light illuminated its features. A man, tall and lean, with eyes that seemed to swallow the light around them. My breath caught in my throat. It was someone I recognized from the town, a man who had once been thought lost, a whispered name among the townsfolk. The Curandera had warned me about him. "Isabella," I whispered, my pulse thrumming in my ears. "It's him. It's Roberto." She gasped, her form beginning to waver. "He shouldn't be here. He was supposed to be gone." Her voice trailed off into a chilling uncertainty. Roberto's lips curled into a smirk. The shadows swirled at his feet, clinging to him like a shroud. "You think you can free her?" he taunted, his voice smooth and mocking. "You barely understand the power you wield." The amulet pulsed in my hand, begging for a response. I tried to summon the chant again, but my throat felt tight, choked by fear. "Isabella, what do we do?" I asked, panic rising in me. "Call him out," she said, her voice steadier now, a partner in this fight. "He thrives on secrecy. Name him. Take his power away." Taking a deep breath, I focused on the man before me. "Roberto," I shouted, letting the anger rise. "You are nothing but a shadow. You have no hold over her." At that proclamation, a ripple passed through the shadows encircling him. But Roberto only laughed. It was a sound that echoed through the chamber, dark and chilling. "You think naming me will make me vanish? You've underestimated the darkness. It feeds on fear, and you've served it well." The shadows shifted behind him, forming a swirling mass that clawed at the light. I could feel my courage wavering as the darkness surged forward, hungry for more than just light. My instincts screamed at me to back away, but I couldn't afford to break our connection. As the shadows lunged, I raised the amulet high, channeling the energy I had felt before. "No, you will not take her." My voice rang out, emboldened by the memory of Isabella's spirit. The beam of light emerged once more, dazzling and bright, pushing against the encroaching darkness. I could see Isabella's silhouette becoming more defined, her hope radiating through the chaos. "Trust each other," she exclaimed, her connection to me an anchor. "We can face him together." I nodded, feeling the bond between us strengthen. We were both fighting against Roberto, against the shadows seeking to reclaim him. "I won't let fear win," I shouted. In response, the amulet blazed brighter than ever, and the vortex began to widen. I felt my resolve cementing, and with it came the realization that we had to confront not just Roberto, but the pain he embodied. "Roberto, your time is over," I declared, holding my ground in defiance. "Isabella deserves peace. We will reveal the truth of your actions." His laughter turned into a growl, and the shadows roared in protest. "Foolish child, you know not what you do. I will consume your light." Then, without warning, the darkness surged toward us, spiraling like a storm. Time seemed to freeze as I braced myself, unsure of what would happen next. Would we be strong enough to fight back? Just as the wave crashed over us, a familiar voice echoed in my mind, a chant I had nearly forgotten. "Say their names," it urged, and at that moment I knew I had to forge ahead, to name not just the shadows, but the truth buried deep within the darkness. As the darkness enveloped me, I focused entirely on the amulet. "Let's do this," I shouted, my heart racing as I dove into the void, ready for whatever awaited me. Chapter 9. The Fractured Light. The darkness wrapped around me like a lover, smothering, yet oddly familiar. I could barely breathe as the shadows twisted, forcing memories and emotions from the depths of my mind. Fear clawed at my insides, threatening to overwhelm me, but I remembered Isabella's presence. Her spirit flickered like the flame of a candle in a storm, steady and unwavering. "Say their names," echoed in my thoughts. I closed my eyes, trying to focus amidst the chaos. The names haunted me. Maria, Antonio, Renata, and others I hadn't known, lives intertwined with the shadows. As I uttered each name, clarity surged through me, illuminating me from within. "Roberto," I shouted, and the shadows recoiled slightly, growing thinner. The transformative energy of the amulet pulsed in tandem with my heart, a reminder of what was at stake. "You think you can consume light, but you will only reveal the darkness you've hidden." The shadows roared, an anguished cacophony that echoed in my skull, shaking my very core. But the amulet flared even brighter, and buoyed by Isabella's strength, I pressed onward. "You are nothing but a spectre, a coward hiding behind lost souls. Face your truth, Roberto." His form shifted as the light tightened around him, his confidence faltering. "This isn't over," he growled, but his bravado wavered. The shadows that had seemed to be a cloak now looked like chains, binding him even as they sought to consume me. The room trembled, the boundaries between darkness and light wavering as I called upon the memories of those he had taken. "Isabella," I whispered, casting my voice out into the darkness. "Give me strength." In response, I felt a wave, a current of hope that reunited us. The walls of the space reverberated with our shared pain, the ghosts, the lost souls all yearning for release. I began to chant their names, my voice growing with each syllable, echoing through the chamber. Isabella, Roberto, Maria, Renata. With every name the shadows writhed, and the light pushed back against them. I felt a surge of energy coursing through me, connecting me to every life that had ever been snuffed out. The amulet became an extension of my will, casting away fear and ushering in a fierce resolve. "Isabella deserves peace," I shouted, reclaiming my power. The weight of their shared grief hung like a shroud, but I harnessed it, pouring it into the amulet. "We are not your victims anymore." And then I saw her, Isabella's figure growing more distinct, reaching back toward me through the darkness, the shroud lifting from her spirit as I summoned the strength of those around us. The wailing became a roar, but I held on to the memories, their stories, their truths. Roberto's face contorted into a mask of fury and despair. "You think you can stop me? Let her be, and you can join her in darkness." But my heart raced with a different truth, igniting a fire in my veins. "No, you are done hiding. Your darkness ends today. The shadows recoiled, crumbling like ash as I stepped forward, channeling all my remaining strength. The amulet blazed, a beacon of light shattering the abyss around us. I shouted once more. Together, we break the cycle. With an explosive burst, the amulet released radiant energy, a blinding light that engulfed the darkness completely, dispersing it into tendrils of mist that unraveled into nothingness. The wails transformed into a sigh of relief, echoing through the air as the shadows were unmade. As the light faded and the air cleared, I found myself back in the library, gasping. The room was once again bathed in golden sunlight, the amulet warm in my hands. I looked around, shaken but alive. The shadows were gone, yet a faint lingering chill reminded me of what I had faced. Isabella stood beside me now, her form solid, a gentle smile lighting her face. "Thank you," she whispered, reaching for my hand, her warmth reassuring. "You freed us. Our stories will not be lost anymore." I nodded, fighting back tears, overwhelmed by what we had accomplished together. But in the quiet aftermath, I didn't know if this was truly over. What would happen now that the stories of the lost were free? Before I could ponder further, the door slammed open, and the Curandera stepped inside, her expression unreadable. "It's over. For now," she murmured. "But the veil is still thin. Evil doesn't rest." My chest tightened. There were still many unspoken questions, revelations buried just below the surface. "What happens next?" I asked, feeling a weight settle over me. She hesitated. "You've changed things, but there are still forces at play. Some mysteries will remain." And there it was. A lingering uncertainty, the dawning realization that darkness and light are often intertwined, and while one battle was over, the war against the unknown was far from finished. As I walked out of the library, Isabella's spirit beside me, I wondered about the stories left untold, the lives lived in shadows, and the delicate balance between light and dark. The truth will always be there, hidden beneath the surface, waiting for someone brave enough to seek it out once again.